Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on a magical night. Gary has anticipated us when we might even see an aurora in the sky. Um, my name is Katherine Hagopian Berry. I am in no way replacing, but just trying to hold space for the amazing Robert Diamante. Tonight, I am here to help us honor Littoral Books' Contemporary Maine Poetry Series here on Poetry Month. In addition to some of the other works of poetry also published by Littoral Books. Littoral has a reputation for fusing poems and images, and some of these books are tremendously special. We have an amazing assembly of poets from all around the state, and they are all here to read. We're going to be reading in order of publication, beginning with Jacqueline Moore's Chasing the Grass and ending with our newest publication. And if you haven't grabbed it up, you need to, The Ends by Christian Barter. So I am going to introduce Chasing the Grass. And then because Jackie is no longer with us, we're going to cue a video of Jackie reading her work. So if you don't know Jacqueline Moore, you should. Jacqueline Moore grew up in Depression-era Greenwich Village. She left for Europe in the early 50s. She moved to Ann Arbor in the 70s and later to Boston, where she became a mentee of Seamus Heaney. And her stories about that are amazing. If you have not read her interview in Chasing the Grass, do it. It is mind-blowing. She spent many years living off the grid in the Maine woods, and her collection of eco-poetry, Chasing the Grass, was published by Littoral Books in 2019. Her poems also appear in Balancing Act 2, A Dangerous New World, and Enough. Jackie left us in June of 2023. Before her passing, Littoral Books was lucky to have the opportunity to record Jackie reading one of her poems.
One is called Blue Gold for Sale. The first waters of creation, pumped up and piped to swimming pools and lawns, blue gold for sale. We are the nymphs dancing our last pavan, heels turned up in night work, sucking the last sap of roots. In the dark of next April, who will push through the earth, shed skin and put on gossamer wings? Who will give you ululations, high and sweet, our songs of autumn, hymns of praise? Now, these are the nymphs, who come out, but they're dying because we're pumping water, their precious water up, and so that's blue gold for sale. And there's a punctuation, there's a period missing there.
We haven't noticed that. We'll get it on the recording.
God, it never stops. This is a poem about. This is a women's poem, but I rather like it, and it's called "Spinning with the Light." And it starts with a quotation from Rumi: "If you split an atom, you will find a little sun and planets that revolve." I love that. Anyway, outside Sufi walls, it's safe for a woman to turn her palms up to receive blessings, to spin in her own orbit around the rising sun. And if grace comes, rejoice. To turn through the swirls of prayer like a mill wheel, grinding the world's chaff. To blow all that chaff away, her headscarf and husband, her gown blossoming out from the heart. It's about being in the world and spinning with the light. So,
It's about being in the world and spinning with the light. So this is the awkward part because I also wrote a book of poetry. I'm the #2 poet from Littoral Books. So you're going to get a little sick of me because I get to read you a poem next. And I get to bio myself, which if you would like to know what the most awkward thing in the world is, it is to have to bio yourself. Rather than tell you about my stuff, which feels awful, what I want to tell you about is what Master meant to me. Master was my first book of poetry. Agnes and Jim nurtured this amazing book into the world, which is what I always wanted, which was a book that I would be proud of forever and ever and ever. Um, it looks like I'm going to be up to number 4 now, so that's pretty exciting. I have a new one. It looks like forthcoming. I've just signed in with Nature Culture Books again to do a 4th book. So it's kind of amazing what happens when you start turning toward the light. What I want to do is reflect for a second on how interestingly our poems collide, and share one with you. So this poem is called Open Season, and it's from last year. And to me, it picks up some of the themes that Jackie's poems did, and I'm interested in seeing how the rest of our voices elaborate that. Open Season. The doe is standing in the middle of our mountain road, a yearling, barely old enough for fear. She freezes at my coming. All the beach leaves yellow blazes on a dark trail. Across the lake, the man from Massachusetts reloads, shot sharp, then silent. I wish I could tell her she was safe with me. All our eyes and pale flanks, soft gaps where lungs and life wait. Every alley, every dark parked car. I still check under the seats, even now at 40, when danger stalks my own daughter, her soft brown eyes, her hair like beach leaves, and so many places for the road to trip her up, mistake tremble for approval. When she runs, I am relieved. We have done our part. We have posted signs, bright orange on the pale trees. We have said, no hunting here. And now it is my very great honor to talk about Littoral Books' anthologies. Specifically 2. The first is Enough, Poems of Resistance and Protest, edited, cannot speak tonight, by Claire Millikin, and Wait, Poems from the Pandemic, edited by Jeri Theriault. We won't be reading from these books because Claire and Jeri want to let you in behind the scenes on what it's like to put together an anthology and gather voices together to tell such amazing stories. It is my honor to start with Claire Millikin, who edited Enough, which won the 2021 Maine Literary Award for anthologies. Claire, were you going to say a little bit at this point?
Sure. I had actually thought I would read a little bit, but that's fine. I'll just talk about the book. It was a very, very strange, a strange time if you can cast your mind back to the summer of 2020. And I did not know Agnes or even Littoral Books, but George Floyd was killed, and I was casting about for a way to express how anguished I felt. And I I don't know why I chose Littoral Books. I think it was just sort of there. I think I thought it was Salt. Do y'all remember back when there was something called Salt in Portland, like a publication? Anyway, so I wrote, and then this character, Agnes Bushell, wrote me back with a very charming and witty reply. And I don't know, it was just sort of alchemy, painful alchemy. That's what I remember thinking is, don't ever do this again. Never. And I have stuck to that. It was, it was a really hard process, but it was a really serious topic, and one that unfortunately has become even more serious. And I tell you what, I think I will just read, because I really am not a great salesperson for my work, including this book, which of course holds I mean, my gosh, the poets that are in this book is an astonishing array. I see Annalise is here and she's in the book. Miku Paul, Myron Hardy, Sama Abdurakib. I mean, we have really wonderful poets in this book. But I was just going to read a time. I've always really loved the opening poem to this book. Loved Donna Loring. I mean, and talk about a hero, American patriot and hero. You know, this. Anyway, she's an amazing person. And she contributed a poem, We Are the First People and the First Nations of this country named America. That's the title of the poem. I'll just read a few lines and then pass it to Jeri, who I think is a much more eloquent speaker than I am. But the poem begins, Donna Loring's poem, again, not my poem. I would, I would love to be able to write with this kind of power. The Europeans invaded our country to own the land and the resources within it, financed by the bankers and the merchants of England and Europe. We had families, land, governments. We fought to protect them. We fought for over 400 years. We had no banks or corporations to finance our warriors. Still, our First Nations fought many wars against these English and European invaders. And the poem goes on, just as clear-sighted as can be. And it ends with an incredible stanza, actually 2 stanzas. I think there's time. I mean, they're really short stanzas. The first people wait for you to recognize them. The first people wait for you to acknowledge their genocide. The first people wait for justice. The first people wait for retribution. All over this country, women are marching now. Women, the path makers. And I just really want to turn your attention to our last 2 lines. The world is watching us. The time is now. So that's Donna Loring.
Wow, that's amazing.
She is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I almost want to just let that sit for a minute. And it's interesting how things cycle back, right? We are approaching, or we're actually in the 5-year anniversary of the COVID-19 lockdown and pandemic, which brings us to Wait, Poems from the Pandemic, edited by Jeri Theriault. I cannot say enough amazing things about Jeri Theriault, who is an accomplished and luminous poet in her own right. Jeri, when you pop in, would you please run down some of the amazing books that you have written and things that you have done, and then talk to us, please, about Wait.
Oh, thank you, Kate. I think I'm unmuted.
You should unmute yourself.
How's that? Yeah? I thought I'd done that. Anyway, Kate, thank you. But I don't want to bio myself. You coined that phrase and I love it. I'll talk about Wait. I mean, it was kind of a crazy idea. Sort of, I think it was like November 2020, maybe December. I mean, it was a very quick decision by Agnes that yes, we want to do this anthology, and I probably would do things differently. I'm sure I would do things differently, but it was kind of fun, the whole project, getting poems and figuring out, printing them out and making piles of them to figure out how I was going to organize this mass of riches, and then putting it together and saying something about it. It was really a very interesting thing. I would totally do something like that again. Not right now, but I totally would do something like that again. And I just love the voices in here. And, I do want to read a poem from the book. And I think, well, how could I choose one poem from this book? The other thing I should mention is that there's quite a bit of art in here. I think that's Jeff Haste, and this one here is Amy Ray. Claudia Hughes is in here, a lot of artists, plus quite a few of the poets sitting here are also included. I chose the next to last poem to read. And like Claire, I find much of the context and content here to be relevant today. And this is a poem by Wesley McNair, and it's called The Tally. The Tally. Those of us who warned about the growing tally, those of us who called it a plot, those who attended church in protest until some of them could not, those of us who worked remotely from their homes, those of us who couldn't, those who wanted to work or couldn't work at all or didn't have a home, some of us who refused to fund the jobless so they would get a job, one of us who blamed the governors and wouldn't fund their states, one of us who promised cures that never came and left the microphone to someone else and walked away. Those who wouldn't wear a mask because they loved their freedom. Those who marched for others who weren't free. Those who said they couldn't breathe in the hospitals. Those who said it in the streets. The many living at a distance. The many others who got exposed. The few who risked their lives for patients in the ER, up close. The daily tally that continued. The families struggling to cope. The surge in the white rooms of zero, and empathy and hope. It resonates with present incidents, doesn't it? It really does. I would mention that Waite will be featured at an event this Saturday at the Portland Conservatory of Music. The Dimensions in Jazz program is having a couple of nights, and Saturday night, one of them of music and poetry, jazz and poetry. And two poems in this work will be featured, one by Betsy Scholl, who's here, and one by Robert Carr. That will be a polyphonic presentation. And I thought I would read a second poem, one of mine, which I'm also going to present at that event. This is one of a trio of poems that I'll be reading to Charles Mingus' Portrait in Three Colors, the music being played by my husband, Philip Carlson, and Carl Demo. And I think, so I've mentioned everyone who's involved in that program. It's at 7:30, Dimensions of Jazz, and Dimensions of Jazz is at the Portland Conservatory of Music, and that is at 28 Neal Street in Portland. Love to see you there. So the first color, Portrait in Three Colors, is radiant, or red. I'm sorry, yellow. Radiant. This is an ekphrastic poem after a piece of art by Dale Chihuly at the Portland Museum of Art, after Radiant Persian Pear by Dale Chihuly. Blossoms swell to globes of swallowed summer, goldfinch flit, canola field, late oak, Crayola kitchen lit by biscuits and lemons, pears in a blue bowl, two Fiesta creamers, one sunflower, one daffodil, saffron, sunwild. When heated, gamboge from Cambodian pine resin, and pale Indian yellow cured from the urine of mango-fed cows. And yellower still this black-lipped Persian pear, like the earrings Pape brought, or might have brought, from France once upon a time. Their brittle swirl even now among the feathers and stones on the dresser, tart little wings like Meme's kicked up yellow skirts. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you, Kate.
Oh, thank you,
Littoral
Jeri.
Books.
I don't want to run out of time, so I want to quickly shine the light on the tremendous Leslie Moore. Leslie Moore has two beautiful publications from Littoral Books, What Rough Beasts and Grackledom, and they are a feast for every sense. Because Leslie Moore is not just a poet, she is also a printmaker and a pen and ink artist. She is the recipient of the 2018 Maine Literary Award for short nonfiction. Her collection of poetry and prints, What Rough Beasts and Grackledom, What Rough Beasts in 2021, Grackledom 2023, were published by Littoral Books. She lives in Belfast, Maine, where she is part owner of the local color gallery.
Thank you, Kate. And thanks everybody for being here tonight. It's such an honor to be reading with all these great poets. I'm going to read 3 spring poems for all of us who wish spring would hurry up and get here. The first is from my first book, What Rough Beasts, and it features actually the beast on the cover. This was an annual event when my husband and I lived for 20 years on Cape Rozier in Brooksville. It was pretty wild there. It's called Visitation. Just after Easter, the famished bear rises from his lair to ravage the neighborhood bird feeders. Outside the bedroom window, he alarms our tiny terrier who roars. We flip on the porch light, gawk. The bear stands on hind legs, swipes the platform feeder 6 feet off the ground with his tongue. He paws the suet cage into his mouth, crushes it, hugs the sunflower feeder to his chest, upends it, fills his empty craw and paces back and forth, rolling his shoulders, swinging his head. I bolt for the camera. He gives a shrug, ambles through the strawberry patch, past the peach trees, towards the feast across the street. And yea, though he walks through our hemlock forest, turning shadowy as he goes, we are sore afraid. The next poem is from my second book, Grackledom. This is for all of us who have a little bit of cabin fever after this long, cold winter. It's called Lucky Streak. Mid-April, the big nor'easter spits a mere 2 inches of snow overnight, winter's last wheeze. The city plow growls down Hunter's Ave, groans back up again, spewing a fantail of Peruvian salt. Now a yellow lab gallops past, head high, ears sailing, no owner in sight. I lean out the door and whistle, but there's no stopping this dog. Belfast Bay beckons at the foot of our street. Her tail flickers like flames in dim morning light. This girl's not going to let a grizzle of snow get in her way. She's free and she's having fun. I'm going to tug on boots and race down after her, bathrobe flapping behind me. There she is. And then I'm going to read my poem that was in Wait, that Jeri Theriault just talked about. I started with an Easter bear and I'll end with an Easter bush. It's called Easter Joy. Maundy, Thursday, 280,000 Mainers lose power. Nighttime temperatures below freezing. Good Friday, the local retirement community announces 24 positive tests for the coronavirus, 19 residents, 3 workers, 2 dead. Easter Eve, our favorite Netflix hero marries his nemesis in haste, in folly, and our hearts are laden with rue. Easter Sunday, our Daphne blooms, deep pink flowers on bare woody stems. Her spicy scent splinters chill air. She is the great-great-great-granddaughter of the Daphne Granny gave us decades ago. Difficult to transplant, she perseveres, rises from her sepulchre of snow with a flourish and a cruel reminder. Every part of her is poisonous. Flowers, leaves, stems, berries. Thank you.
Oh, Leslie, thank you so much. It's like you want to let everything linger, and I'm filled with the desire to grab your beautiful books off the shelf and show every one of my favorite poems next to my favorite piece of art, because they really do hold hands. And another book that is just luminous in the way that it combines image and word and different kinds of words, effusively beautiful poetry, written meditations, uh, co not coincidences, but like holy confluences, is Gary Lawless's How the Stones Came to Venice. Gary Lawless is the co-owner of Gulf of Maine Books in Brunswick. His collection of poems from Littoral Books, How the Stones Came to Venice, will not only be thrilling hearts in English, but will now be thrilling hearts in Italian. It will be published this summer by Zest Lettura of Milan. And what a beautiful combination. So Gary Lawless.
Thank you. So my book, How the Stones Came to Venice, comes from a month that Beth and I spent in Venice at a Fluxus Arts Foundation. And my project was literally how the stones came to Venice. I was looking at the building stone, the marble that statues were made from, what the pigments were made from, where the sand came from, that glass was being made from, that kind of thing. So for a month I was walking around. But the poem that led me there comes out of my grandfather Lester, who lived in Prospect, Maine, and worked in granite quarries. And this poem kind of sets me off. Driving home from Belfast into the crescent moon, I hear the granite singing, and it is alive. I want to tell you that granite is a migratory species. Think plate tectonics, continental drift, glacial erratics. But you can read the flow lines from when the granite was liquid and moving quickly. I want to tell you that lichen is a language of granite, that granite speaks with air and water and light. We might never know what stories it holds deep within the rock. So then we got to Venice, and we spent a month in Venice and learned a lot of different things. And here's a little poem that I wrote that was used by the group Citizens for a Living Venice, which is opposed, among other things, is opposed to cruise ships and opposed to the greedy, nefarious mayor of Venice, Mayor Brunaro. But anyway, this was translated into Italian and went all over the place. Everything is holy. Bless the lagoons, sweet St. Lucy. Bless the birds. Bless the fish. Bless the trees on the outer islands. Bless the waves and the wind. Send the cruise ships to hell. There is room there for one more boat. And I would like to point out that the boat I would like to send there right now, Jeff Bezos is going to be married on his super yacht in the lagoon in Venice in June, and he's renting 5 hotels and all of the water taxis in Venice for 3 days. And if there's a ship I would like to send to hell right now, it's that one. So there, I'm sending that curse out. And I do want to say Lori Harley designed this book, and it's a treasure. What she did is just, it made it a treasure. I never expected it to be so beautiful, and it is. So thank you to Lori, and thank you to Agnes and Jim. And Kate. Hi, Kate. Bye.
So my understanding from listening to people complain is that you won, right? They've pushed a lot of the cruise ships out of Venice Harbor.
temporarily they're up north and they're coming down by bus, and the mayor wants to dredge a deeper channel that will not only bring in the cruise ships, but will bring in the oil tankers that used to have to stay outside of the lagoon. He wants them to bring them in and back of the island to the mainland. No problem there, obviously, right? So yeah, that's a temporary thing.
I'll give a temporary cheer and hope it turns perhaps a little more permanent. Um, wow. I mean, I love the way this stacked up because I think we're going to see the feistiness continue because it is my honor to introduce Claire Millikin and her book, Elegiaca Americana. Wow. What do I say to talk about all of my favorite things in this book? It's actually really difficult because the answer is all of them. I can tell you that Claire Millikin is amazingly accomplished, both in the world of poetry and in the world of academia. Here in the world of poetry, she is the author of 6 collections of poetry, and I'm sure it will be 7 soon. And I will turn you over to Claire Millikin to share some of Elegiaca Americana with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. So I actually published my 10th book was published this year, and it's sort of like my aunt used to say, who had a lot of kids down in Georgia, quantity, not quality. But yeah, so
No, she's being modest. They're all quality. Yeah, I saw 6.
no,
And I was
you
like,
haven't
wait a
met my
minute, weren't there
cousins.
more?
Say what?
I saw 6 in this bio, and I'm like, wait a minute, aren't there more? So thank you for
Yeah,
that correction.
no, no. I'm just like saying, the shame of it really. But yeah, I'm gonna read from, it's interesting. I have, Elegiaca Americana was, Lord only knows what drug I was on when I titled this collection, but it's been a rough sell. And when I was looking through it, to figure out a couple poems to read, I was like, it is a good book. It's a shame people really didn't like it, but it's good, it's a good little book. So it was originally started when my beautiful friend Artemis Aritakis was dying of cancer. And this poem called Etymology is a very short poem about that experience, or not, it's not about that experience. It's a little edge, a little shard of that experience. Etymology, of course, just means how words, their history as words. Etymology. Hospital and hotel share the same root. Both words mean a temporary room where curtains blow through open windows and it snows softly, hobbling gaps of sky. Always a place where the story diverges. And I have no choice but to choose the next room, the one without you. You in a hospital, me in a hotel, listening to the city move through its traffic. Car after car after car, it goes on. The book, though, is probably about a lot more than Artemis. I mean, Artemis herself could contain multitudes. She was truly a wonderful human being. And, the Greek church in Charlottesville, which had her services, was full, so much so that people were like leaning in through the windows. I mean, she was really beloved. But the next couple poems, which are also quite short, so I don't think I'll overstretch my time, are about America, because here we are, and that is really what the book is about, this mourning for America, which, unfortunately, I had no idea how bad it gets when this book came out. But anyway, this one's called Mother and Child. She drops her glasses into the road. Her young son dips to fetch them. They carry all their belongings in plastic bags, knotting their lives in an American city, a metropolis, mother and child with faces round as cherubim. She puts the glasses back on. A courtyard is an enclosure, but rain gets in, broken at its every bone. Try to hold it together. Awaken from the bad dream of knowledge, America. And then this poem is more autobiographical about my family, and it's called Selfie in a Family of Campers. And it's about a trip when my parents decided to drive us from Georgia to California God knows why, but anyway, selfie in a family of campers. At dusk, the mother opens a can of tinned meat, so heavy with salt it burns the tongue, like something sacred for which we are unready. All that waits is night, a camper parked by the roadside at an edge of America. America was always on edge. It wasn't just us seeking home somewhere, it was everyone looking for home as if America were open and not stolen. The mother opens tinned meat. We've long kept our secrets carefully. By the time I was 3 years old, I already knew never to tell. A camper parked at the edge of the road, night enters the windows, sleepers hitch on the floor, a stringent scent of gasoline sifting through dark light. She says in the morning we'll drive till we find a place to bathe, a cool cloth laid across us. Maybe we only need to be quiet now. Every roadside a parabolic, roads opening and closing through America, a stolen world. Thanks, Kate, and of course, Agnes, always.
I want to share from the comments. If you haven't caught it, it's fantastic. Littoral Books comments wants to remind you that you can actually still purchase all of these lovely books if they're tugging your heart as much as they're tugging mine, and that Moby Dick was also a pretty tough sell. So you stand in good company. The 8th book in the Contemporary Poets series is Old Orchard Beach Cycle. Robert Gibbons is the author of 14 books of poetry, including his trilogy of prose poems published by 9 Point Publishing in Bridgeton, Maine. His long poem, Anatomy and Geography, was completed 10 years ago in Portland and is due out in October from Stalking Horse Press in Santa Fe. I didn't know that till I read it. Congratulations, Robert. If you'll just unmute for me. You got it.
Thank you, Kate. I thought I knew how these buttons work. I have lived long enough. It wasn't that. And if it wasn't, what was it? The fact that I'm alive long enough to recall someone in the family hauling a bucket of coal to heat the furnace. Another, an even heavier white canister with handles carrying kerosene for the kitchen stove, and cotton curtains drawn across a window with red flowers, louder than the family gossip whispered over the table by 2 women with husbands at or out of work. Talismanic stone. Without a word from anyone, only the waves for company, and talismanic stone, animal in watch pocket. A sudden fling of sandpipers. On my walk, I lost track of time. At time's return, I found my place within the vast universe, finally, at this age, resembling a single grain of sand. Needless to say, I'm proud of the design of this book by Laurie and the editing by Agnes and the photographs by Jim. Thank you, Kate.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I'm glad we're not just here. We're going to get a follow-up from Robert in a few minutes. Where I am is at one of the most wonderful moments of our program where I get to turn this over to the amazing Agnes and Jim Bushell to talk a little bit more about the Contemporary Maine Poets series.
Thank you, Kate. I feel speechless really because I'm just filled with poems and really happy, so happy to see all of you here. Littoral Books started in 1975 publishing poetry. And so poetry's been part of the press from the very beginning. The first books that we published then were Balancing Act #1, which was a book of poems by 10 Maine women, and a single poet's book, Mustard Gas by Frances Salenzi. And it seems like though that foundation of poetry has kept us afloat, spiritually and morally and with pleasure ever since we re-established Littoral Books in 2018. As you probably remember, the very first anthology we did then was Balancing Act 2, which Kate was in and Betsy was in. I mean, so many poets. We were overwhelmed with poetry by Maine women. And that book inspired us to start the Contemporary Maine Poetry series, primarily because there were so many wonderful poets, and Jim and I felt that each one of them deserved a book. And so the first book we did was Jackie Moore's. And as you saw from the video, she was an amazing person. And her poems, she called them eco poems. And they all reflect upon the destruction of the earth and the need for us to shepherd ourselves, to shepherd the earth, to keep it alive, to care for it. And I feel like a circle has been completed in a way because Christian's book, The Ends, is also about the landscape of Maine and the need to cultivate the land and be aware of it and treasure it. And so many of you have also talked about that. It seems as though it's an underlying theme from many of the poems in the series. And some of you have mentioned this, and it's totally true that this moment in time is one in which the voices of poets are essential. We need you. We need sanity. We need strength. We need the articulation of a position, of resistance, of our humanity. And I'm so grateful that we were able to present these books to Maine readers. And we are very grateful to all of you. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Agnes, you changed our lives.
No, well, no, I didn't. You were.
Okay, because I absolutely have to keep the time and I'm not going to cry on a Zoom when I'm supposed to be hosting. I would like to introduce You Are Ruining My Loneliness, which seems very appropriate in a moment, ironically appropriate in a moment filled with people whose voices pierce straight to the heart. Kate Kearns has appeared in Maine Women's Magazine, the Maine Sunday Telegram, the Maine Public Radio's Poems from Here. She's been published in Salamander, Peregrine, Rustica, Sugar House Review, and elsewhere. She earned her MFA from Lesley University. You Are Ruining My Loneliness is her first, but probably never going to be her last poetry collection. I am honored to introduce Kate.
Thanks, Kate. The other Kate, the only Kate, who also did the interview in my book. So it's a double Kate book. I also want to add to the pile of praise for Lori, the beautiful design of this. We should all be holding them up a lot more. I'm thoroughly spoiled. No future book will measure up to the labor of love that this, just as an object, is. And of course to Agnes and Jim, because for me as well, this was a first publication of a book. And I too will not cry on Zoom, so here we go. Okay. Ode on a bathroom sink. Crouched above exposed pipes, I'm the silhouette of my pregnant self from years ago, arms cradling the bowl just beyond gravity's center. For months, this chore has hovered undone, and now we're out of time to put it off. He's between my feet on the floor, my husband, his hands clanking. Threaded joints and a wrench whose name I don't know clutter the tile. A pun, something about labor at the edge of my brain itches. This hip tilt hurts, but I won't say so. Nothing to look at but myself in the mirror, hair untidy, reflection flecked with toothpaste spatter. The sink and I are imprinted till an anchor in the wall can bear its weight. This baby's heavy with fragility, too heavy for high verse, heavier than his dear skull I can't see but know is there, stubbly neck overdue for a haircut. He's gone to scruff in this long stretch home. Soon again he'll be trimmed clean and in his boots. It's porcelain, his promise to return, and my fingers ache, not letting slip this unbeautiful object. All right, one more while I'm on the love poem track. This is called Love Poem with Faults. Ever since sand was sand and water, water, they've followed each other around. They lift and settle all over the cracked earth, never the same 2 days in a row, but shift after shift, sand stays sand, water, water. The land is made of meeting places. Deep beneath the mirror, earth on earth knocks crusty elbows, and from the cracks, new ground forms. Fissures form and settle, fill with water, sky, and tiny flecks we don't yet know exist. At the center, a magnet. This implausible life began as a singularity that burst apart into breakfast, amygdala, and birch bark that burns even when it's wet. I'm saying there are days I want to shake you. Days I love better from away. Your misplaced glasses, your cereal for dinner. I'm thinking love's a glance back at singularity, a body's memory of a universe, all its fault lines and fig leaves pressed together, patient and light as a dandelion seed. But I'm too comfortable with silence to tell you so. If anyone's going to be in Topsom tomorrow, I'm actually reading that poem and another new one at Topsom Public Library with Gibson Fay LeBlanc as part of their National Poetry Month series. So at 2 o'clock, Topsom Public Library, come see me and Gibson chit chat and read poems. And thank you, everybody, and thank you, Kate.
Oh, thank you, Kate.
And Robert, the silent arbiter in the background.
The Topsom Poetry Series is remarkable. I would pitch everything in it, and I want to pick up my house and move to Topsom and be there every minute. It is my extreme honor to introduce the 10th book in the Maine Contemporary Poetry Series, With Little Light and Sometimes None at All, by the amazing Richard Foerster. Since the late 1970s, his work has appeared in every amazing place you could possibly imagine, including but not limited to the Best American Poetry, Kenyon Review, Tri-Quarterly, the Gettysburg Review, Shenandoah, the Southern Review, and Poetry. Foerster has worked as a lexicographer, educational writer, typesetter, teacher, editor of astounding literary magazines Chelsea and Chautauqua Literary Journal. He lives in the most extraordinary Nazarene church in Elliott, Maine, with his partner, the artist Douglas Taylor, whose work is lovingly also represented in this book. It is my honor to introduce Richard.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much. And thank you, Agnes and Jim and Lori Harley, for making this lovely, lovely book for me. And it got a gold medal at the Independent Publishers of New England Awards this year. So it's as much Laurie's and Jim and Agnes's book as it is an honor for me. I have two poems to read for you. And one has to do with this. Can you all see it? Who's on the front? And it features, without mentioning his name, in the book. It's called Numismatics, and it starts with mentioning Roman coins, and I collected them for years and years, and by coincidence, I sold my collection last week, it's time in my life to start shedding things. So, and it mentions a couple of Roman emperors and this coin, Numismatics. The tarnished coins of Roman emperors I once avidly collected lie boxed like buttons, orphaned in my dresser drawer. For years, I used to sit face to face with the infamous and obscure and scrutinize the dime-sized portraits, the lettered halos of their names and honorifics, the abbreviated spins on governance and piety. Who but a classicist now would care to spend hours, say, with avuncular hook-nosed Nerva, pater patriae, to learn he ruled for a year and a half, then died in bed? Or that scraggly, stern-browed Pertinax, gung-ho on reform, was slain after a single winter on the throne by his own praetorians, then enrolled among the gods. Render unto Caesar, we're told, the things that are Caesar's. In America, coinage has been a province of the safely dead, the presumed great, the too soon struck down, or the minted ideals we deify as liberty, then dress in a Roman smock. I reminded a friend of that fact when, with a half smile bordering on a smirk, she gifted me a knockoff silver dollar from Wish.com, made in China, but bearing the Great Seal of the United States and the now familiar legend. And there, smugly on the front, beside a tinsley silhouette of liberty and a colorized backdrop of his tower, was a headshot of himself beneath an arch in caps, the President of the United States. Forget and to God the things that are God's. History records that Nerva succeeded tyrannical Domitian, in whose murder his wife was complicit, and that Pertinax ascended the purple when would-be gladiator Commodus the Insane was strangled by his sparring partner, an athlete aptly named Narcissus. Today again, with my magnifying glass in hand, I realized how mistaken I was all those years ago, squinting for hours over those mirroring pools, not to see in each imperial face that rippled up at me proof of one deathless countenance, melted down and refined, then forged again into this common species. Our hammers echo ceaselessly, "Hail Caesar, father of our nation." Guess if there's a message to that, it's that we're all somehow complicit in what we're living through. Second poem is a shorter one, and it's set in Portland. I was on my way to the craft fair, and came across, does that show up at all? On the pavement on Free Street. And it reminded me immediately of this fossil of Archaeopteryx. Can you make it out? So it's on my way to the Fine Craft Show, Portland, Maine. Brittle as a child's balsa toy, abandoned when it fell to the red brick walk. This corpse of what? A pigeon, crow, that weeks of drought and August sun unfleshed, here on Free Street, untrodden, ignored, unswept by wind or lazy merchants, is perfectly displayed in the blunt reality of decay, as if it were Archaeopteryx before the slurry of time fixed it to a matrix of stone. How delicate the neck's beaded braid, the skull's shallow well where an eye floated with awareness from its ledge over the city, the breastbone's splintery twigs still woven to a flap of skin like a nest from which its brood has flown. The matted wings ruined under feathers, gilded in this light, like an emblem of empires gone, arched downward in a gesture of ascent. Tibia, tarsus, the leathery orange toes mime a desperate high-step run, as if the bird had been racing to get somewhere, to propel itself, to propel its weighty stillness into flight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have such respect for Robert. This is so difficult. I just want to sit here in them all, because they're all so amazing. Everything that you all have brought to this reading is amazing. We are making space for Steve Langan, who cannot be here tonight. So I'm going to turn things over to Kate Kearns.
Hello, I'm back, standing in for Steve, who is doing some caregiving this evening. I've chosen a couple of short poems from his book, Bedtime Stories. Unfortunately for me, Steve doesn't really do much explaining or preambles before reading his poems anyway, so I'm just going to follow his example and jump right in. This first one is called Watchman. At this elevation, even the dire mysteries are excusable. Everyone's here, the banker, the miser, Europeans. Do I think about falling over? Every minute of my life. But we should not tell the children until they're ready. And how will we know? From this point of view, the past seems redeemable. There is gray at my temple, and so be it. I was haunted all morning by the song that lonely girl beside the pool played last night on her ukulele, but now I cannot hear it. Can you hear it? Furthermore, the rain or the chance of it, not excluding how I feel when you lean and touch me. All right. The second poem is all in couplets. It's called What It Looks Like, How It Flies. I've been meaning to unburden the word aerialist of all its longing. If for once you looked up in the sky, no, into the sky like a beggar, like a wanted man. I tried to speak up, but I wasn't fast talker enough, or vaudevillian enough, or really paying attention. I was a basket of poisonous thorns. I was the pages torn off a prescription pad. And now so many heroes are gone, acrobats, high flyers, men from the generation who said, I'm going to the grocery store, and everyone nodded. That's the problem with modern life. All this agreement, the comfortable chairs. I think I chose that poem just so I could say I was a basket of poisonous thorns out loud. But yes, that's Steve.
Such a wonderful resonant line. We get a bonus because Robert Gibbons has published not just one, but two books within the Contemporary Maine Poetry series. We return to Robert for Old Orchard's Palace.
Thanks again, Kate. Missing the exit. We've been here not quite 2 years, 2.5 weeks short of that, in fact. This fifth abode in as many years has offered nothing but pleasure. The shower curtain doesn't cling to your skin as the makeshift one did above the tub in Waterville. If you catch sight of a great blue heron, its stamina is apparent in its flight pattern, so unlike the flock roosting in trees above the dead lake in Colorado. Not that everything sucked prior to this. Exile calls up the truest words. Exile is something to survive in language and love. We lacked neither of those. Love, dependent on language. I loved the mountains in Colorado and pitied the fallow Kennebec River, almost to the point of loving it up north. But here, the air, the sea, the light are the elements, as Agnes Varda put it, of love. We even laughed out loud together about missing the exit on 95 in our attempt to track down the last 2 boxes of whole wheat matzos outside of Brooklyn. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I have a soft spot for books I did an interview for, and it was my very great privilege to interview Emma Krosschell for her debut collection, Hermitage. Emma lives in Brooksville, Maine, with her partner and their dog. She spends her time wandering in the woods, baking as much bread as she can. Hermitage is her first collection, but most especially not her last. I am delighted to introduce Emma Krosschell.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, so my first collection is Hermitage, published in the fall. And I'm just going to read 2 poems. They're both quite short. Most of my poems are very short, so this isn't going to take very long, but I'm going to read 2 poems that feature a dynamic that's kind of common in the book, and one between escape and belonging. A pull to leaving everything behind and at the same time being swallowed back up. The first poem is called High Up Here. Here I have been cradled, high up here where you wanted to cradle me, where the breeze gently flutters and at its touch myself softly wisps away. Up high in the slowly pooling sunlight and the empty, empty, empty sky. High up here where you wanted to cradle me so badly that I began to believe that I wanted to stay there, so high, floating, cradled. But really, the smells of earth and blood kept drifting up on the same sweet breeze that was making me a ghost, that was making me yearn to hurt, just to be sure I had a body that could be hurt. And then the second one is called A Lost Place. It wasn't home, not exactly, but it was where I'd point to if you asked how I'd become me, where I'd come to stand in the cold winter night beneath the pine boughs and staring sky and feel joy, not fear, when my brain reached out to the atoms far away and knew the kinship of me and the stars. And that's it. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet.
Well, Emily, you certainly don't have to if you don't want to. You were well under your time. And each one of your poems is just a beautiful little snapshot. Like that continues to build and deepen the more you consider it. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I understand I'm under my time. I just like my poems are just short. I would have to read so many to fill it out.
Well, I think the enormous diversity that's represented here is part of the power of what Littoral Books has accomplished. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge, like, it's my privilege to look out over the crowd of you and to recognize just how many other astoundingly talented Maine poets we have in the audience, many of who have been anthologized by Littoral Books in these books as well. And I hear their voices, even though unfortunately we can't triple the time and hear them all right now. Which brings us to the end of our program with the ends. Christian Barter is a poet working and writing in Bar Harbor, Maine. For the past 35 years, he has worked for the National Park Service at Acadia National Park as a trail crew supervisor, project manager, arborist, heavy equipment operator, dry stone mason, and specialist in park matters related to Americans with disabilities. He's published 3 previous collections of poetry, and he's served as the poet laureate of Acadia National Park, which is stunning to give stunning voice to such a stunning place. Christian.
Thank you. Wow, it's such an honor to be here. And I'm increasingly glad that I titled my poem The Ends. It makes such a great last volume to read at the end of a reading. This book, I've been working on these poems for 10 years, and they come out of a time when I was just questioning everything, and probably still am. And so I'm gonna read 2 poems that go somewhat deeply into the nature of those questions. They're both sort of about influence, and there's a whole a series within the book that are named after characters that were influential in some way or another on me. And this one's called Derrida, and it's somewhat about the question of the value of poetry itself, and the very literal world that I live in as a blue collar supervisor, and then of course being a poet working with language. Derrida. Oh, and I should say, in case you've forgotten from your English classes, I use this term bricoleur, which he was very fond of, which is about using whatever it is at hand to make what you're working on. Derrida, to pretend I actually do the thing. That's a quote from him. So what is a watershed? The state erosion guy asks the gym full of hoodied equipment operators. We know the term, am I right? Watershed moment. A basketball backboard floats over his head, symbol of my first scrimmage with men like these, scrambling for the ball, in calm preamble to the untutored violence of the locker room. What the hell is this guy trying to sell us? The man on my left says towards me in the old dynamic, find someone to hurt together or be the one picking his books up from the blood. And for the life of me, I can't remember why I moved back to Maine after the fellowship or never wrote anything anyone would read. We move the earth, it says on his t-shirt, the metaphor rehardened to concrete. It's always moving on you, water, somewhere. We squeak and yawn in our foldable chairs. 60 or 80 men in a high school gym come from towns with names like Hope and Freedom to hear a man descant on silt runoff. Was I trying to be a bricoleur, not with language, but my actual life? Or did I literally just need to dig more? Or was it just one small slope after another until the drop was in the other ocean? The wall above him reads, away and home. See, all the water that is on the land and all the water that is under the land, he points to the cartoon, is going here. And then I'm just going to read one more. another big influence for me is the poet Robert Lowell. And he, he, of course, wrote very openly about himself and his own life, famously, and as do I. And for me, it often leads me back into questions about, as Agnes sort of referred to earlier, our relationship in general as humans to the earth, and which is kind of where I found myself as I was writing this poem. But it is modeled on his poem "Reading Myself," which is the one in which he says, I memorized the tricks to set the river on fire, somehow never wrote something to go back to. Reading Myself, after Robert Lowell. We don't create the world we envision. We don't become the change we'd like to see. The writing that turned out the way I'd planned wasn't poetry. The loves I couldn't stand to lose were just the ones who had to go. If God exists, we've disappointed him not through our failings, but by definition. Take some comfort in that, Christian. Take some comfort in this work you've done. It's all the truth your back could bear. Mankind is built to alter, not accept. Why else would we tear down the woods cathedral everywhere, which is the world we'd choose, but can't, because it was already there? Thank you.
Oh, Christian, thank you so much. The last line of my poem last year is "This is your time." And poets and poetry lovers, this is now your time. Please feel free to linger a little bit if you'd like. I believe that our host is going to let us know how long the room will stay open. Feel free to turn your video on and unmute. It has been my very, very deep honor to be with you tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you, Agnes and Jim.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Kate.